Have you ever been in a conversation that turned to spiritual things, but then the person you were talking with said something that you totally disagree with, and you felt stuck for words? Well, that's our topic for today, because there are a lot of different beliefs out there in our society, but it's also true that we can learn how to engage.
Here in our nation and in Western society at large, there's a growing belief that all religions are essentially the same. And this is a challenge for conversation because disagreeing can be awkward.
But it's also true that the major religions of the world actually say majorly different things on the major topics. So this truth claim by our society isn't true.
So how do we deal with this? How could we disagree without disagreeing?
Well, here's the key. When people say things we disagree with, we applaud what is good while asking questions about what we don't understand.
And what does this achieve?
It both puts people at ease and keeps the conversation going.
I was in a car with a young professional I knew, and she suddenly piped up to say,
"Hey, I've been thinking about spiritual things."
Now that was actually quite bold because she knew I was like the God guy. So I said, "Great, what are you thinking to do about that?" To which she replied,
"Well, I've been thinking about getting into Ouija boards."
Now some Christians might hear that and go, "What are you thinking of doing that for?" But knowing this person as I do, if I'd responded like that with any tone of judgment, she would have replied either verbally or silently to say,
"Who do you think you are to judge me? Mental note, never talk to him again about religion."
and this one-off opportunity where she initiated a sincere spiritual conversation would have been gone. So I responded to say, "Great, I love that you see yourself as a spiritual person. Me too. Now, why are you thinking of looking at Ouija boards?" And as she explained, it just didn't make sense to me. So I engaged the conversation authentically, not with judgment, not to change her, just first to understand. I said, "I don't get it. To me, Christianity's like this big smorgasbord. It's got entrees, mains, desserts, Coca-Cola, coffee, cheesecake. It answers all the big questions. If we look at Islam, I don't think it's as big a smorgasbord, but it still answers many of the major questions of life. While Ouija boards are kind of like this small game of Monopoly on the side of the table. Why Ouija boards and not Christianity?" And because it was a relaxed and respectful conversation, she told me. And my point is this, that explanation she then gave was actually the beginning of our real conversation. Because only at that point did she reveal what she actually believed and thought, and it had nothing to do with Ouija boards.
You see, getting to the heart of a matter is sometimes like peeling the layers of the onion. And that's why when you're in a situation where there's a disagreement, it's wise to applaud what is good, because this puts everyone at ease. And then to ask questions about what doesn't make sense to you, because questions open up conversations, and it's amazing where these conversations can go.
I was on a longer flight one day and I discovered I was sitting next to a journalist and that she had all the standard negative views of Christianity that you might expect in our society. She was a skilled conversationalist too, yet by knowing what topics might be sensitive, I simply avoided direct comments on them. Instead, I'd tell stories and replied many of her questions with questions. And incredibly, this conversation we had, which was mostly about spiritual and moral things, lasted 4.5 hours of a 10-hour flight. And I was so encouraged at its conclusion because she kind of then admitted that many of her assumptions about Christians being judgmental and narrow-minded and unscientific and so on had been somewhat challenged. And why was that encouraging? Well, it's because this was a really difficult conversation with a mature journalist. And a decade prior, I don't think I'd have had a clue how to engage with her, because no one had taught me how to ask questions, or the wisdom of sometimes avoiding the quotable quote to keep a conversation going.
So you might have said nothing to avoid awkwardness.
Yep, or I might have foolishly answered her questions directly, in which case she'd have incorrectly thought exactly as I thought, narrow-minded Christians. And with that judgment, the conversation would have been over.
So, the tip for the day is this: when there is a clear difference between you and someone else, applaud what is good.
While asking questions about what you don't understand.
Because this approach can open conversations up that might otherwise quickly end. How about trying it out?